Are you struggling with errors or bugs inside of Unity? Don't worry, you're not alone. Debugging is an essential skill for every game developer, and today we are going to go over the top tools and techniques for finding and fixing common issues inside of Unity. Whether you're a beginner or just need a refresher, this tutorial is for you. Let's dive in. First off, what is debugging? Debugging is just the process of finding errors or bugs inside of your code. In Unity, these bugs can be anything from script errors inside of your script or gameplay errors, like when your player is not moving when he is supposed to. Inside of this tutorial, we are going to be covering errors inside of the Unity console, debug.log, breakpoints inside of your code, and common Unity errors that you can fix very easily. Okay, so the first type of error that we are going to cover today is Unity console errors, which are just errors inside of your script. You can see here that I have a test script set up right here, and it is up on a test object right here inside of my hierarchy. This test script is attached to this test object. I'm going to open up this test script in my choice of coding editor, and then you can meet me once you have that there. Right here, it's just a sample script that has the regular things that Unity has, and right now, we are just going to go up to the top and create a variable. So the first, we can just create a public float, and we can name this speed. Let's set speed to something like 5. Just so you know, this is not going to be an actual tutorial. You do not have to follow along with this, but if you'd like to, I would encourage you to, just to learn about Unity debugging. We are just creating these variables just for show. Here inside of update, we are going to do something. I'm going to set speed equal to 10 on every frame of the game. But to give us an error, I'm going to type speed with an extra E. So right here, it is going to give us an error, and it's going to give us a little underlined thing inside of your code, and this is a great way to figure out if you have an error without even playing your game. Right here, if we hover over this, it says the name speed does not exist in the current context. And it gives us the name speed but with the extra E, and then when we look over this, we can think, oh no, this is probably supposed to be speed. So we can just take the E out, but we're not going to want to do that right now. Also down here, if we click on this error, it will show us here, and then we can see it what it actually is before going into Unity. It says again, the name speed does not exist in the current context. But if you missed all of this, if you missed these red lines, and you go back inside of Unity right here, and then once Unity compiles, it's going to give us a little error that says the name speed does not exist in the current context. And that is exactly what it says inside of Visual Studio. But right here, if we play this game, it is going to stop our game because it's not going to the code is going to break, and it has this nice big red sign, and it gives us an error, and it says this red down here, and all of these warning signs are just telling you that there is something wrong with your code, and you need to go and fix it. A great way to go to fix it is inside of Unity right here. If we double click on this, it will take us right to our script and right to the line where the bug is happening. Right here it's speed, and if you know what your code is about, then you can just realize what your error is and fix it. And that is the basics of these console errors inside of Unity. Sometimes there are no errors in your code, but something isn't working. Like your player isn't moving, but he is supposed to, or another object inside of your scene is supposed to be doing something, but that is not happening. I'm going to give you an excellent way to fix this, debug.logs. If you do not know what debug.log is, it is something that just prints to the console, which is, the console is where we saw our error right here. I just elongated that so you can see it. And then debug.logs are just little messages so that you can see different things inside of your code without having to go back and forth through the Unity editor and your coding editor. If we go to our coding editor, we can see here that we have speed set to being 5, but instead of 5, let's just set this to input dot get axis raw, and then we can just type in here horizontal, and then let's just multiply this by 0, right? In a normal game, we would be creating a player controller script, and we would not multiply this by 0, but right now I'm going to keep this multiplied by 0 and just pretend I forgot. We can go back inside of the Unity editor, and when we're here we can see that we don't have any errors inside of the console. If we go to our test object right here, we can see our speed is set to 0 right now, but once we click play and our game is running, we can go to our test object, and we would expect speed to be something higher than 0 when we click the up and down arrow keys or the W and S keys. If you do that, then your speed should be nothing but 0 because we are multiplying it by 0. But if you are pushing your W and S keys, you would expect that something should be happening. So what we can do is we can get a debug.log. Right here, we would expect something to be happening when we push our keys, but since nothing is happening, it's just still setting speed to 0. So we're going to want to find where the bug in our code is. Since there's no actual error, it's just something isn't working. And we can use debug.logs for that. So in the next line, we'll type debug.log, and it's going to look for a string, or it's going to look for a variable. So I'm going to do a string, and I'm going to say the speed is, and then I'm going to click plus speed, and then that will add this string to the speed, and it will print that out as your speed is something. And if this should be printing 0 because, and we can check this if we go back inside of our Unity editor and click the play button. Down here in the console, we are getting this little message that says your speed is 0. And even though that is exactly what we expect it to be, in a normal game, we would not want our speed to be 0. If we're clicking our move keys, we would want it to be something else. So we can get out of play mode, go back inside of our code, and check that, and now we know that the error is somewhere in this line of code because it's behind this debug.log. And if we comb over this line of code, we can see, we multiplied this by 0. So if we take the multiply by 0 out, and we just put the semicolon right after that, we can go back inside the Unity editor and click the play button. Now we can see down here this number is going up because our speed is still 0, but if we move or if we click our keys, our speed could be 1 or -1. And you can see that those go up when I hold the keys, 1 goes up when I hold the right key, -1 goes up when I hold the left key, and that is working just as we expected because the debug.logs are printing what our speed is. Now, while debug.logs are great for small Unity projects like the thing we just did, breakpoints are much more useful for larger code where you don't know exactly where your bug is and where you can check exactly everything what is happening inside of your code. So we are going to create a breakpoint. So we can go back inside of our code. You can see here that I deleted the debug.log so that it doesn't fill up the console log in Unity. And to create a breakpoint, we're going to go all the way over here to this gray line, and you can see there's little circles highlighting up where I go to the lines of code. We can go to the line that I want. Right here, I'm going to break right here on this line of code, and I'm going to click it, and it's going to highlight it red, and it's going to have a red circle. And then this means this is going to break at this line of code, meaning it is going to stop the code, and we can check all of the variables and that is happening. So breakpoints are just inside of VS Code or Visual Studio, but to import them into Unity, we're going to click this button up at the top that says Attach to Unity. Then we can go back inside the Unity editor, and it's going to say that we have this C# debugger attached, but I do not have debugging enabled for my projects. I'm just going to click Enable Debugging for this session, just so that I can have this working. And then we're going to click Play to see our debugging in action. Now, it was difficult to see, but when I click Play, it moved me straight to here because this is in the update method, which is called once per frame, and it brings us to our coding editor every time this is broken. once the code is broken, and then we can check variables. So right here, speed is set to 0, and that's because we are not holding down any keys, and we're not going to be able to hold down any keys just because we are inside of here, and it's not going to do anything inside of our coding editor. And then we can now actually step through the code. So a great way to do that is to click F10, and it will step through your code again. Out of this update statement, we can click F10 again to move it, and it says frame not in module, and then we can just click continue up here instead, and it will take us back because this update method goes one time per frame. And then we can check all of our variables down here. Speed is set to 0, and that's just because we're not pushing any of these keys. And breakpoints are really useful for hard to find issues that debug.logs cannot really find. Breakpoints are really helpful for just checking all of the variables inside of your code, because if you had to type them all out inside of a debug.log, that'll be really painful and time consuming. But breakpoints are really useful because you can check all of the variables down here. And right now I'm just going to click stop, and then that will end my breakpoint. And to get a breakpoint out, I can just go here and click this little button again, and it will take the breakpoint out, and my code can run normally. And now for some common errors that you will most likely see inside of your coding experience. We already covered on one of them, which was speed set equal to 5 or something like that, but we misspelled a variable. Right now, if our speed is not correctly, it would say the name speed does not exist in the current context. And that is a variable that you will most likely find sometime during your coding experience. Another error that you will most likely find during your coding is if we can do something like this. We do an if, and then we just do our curly brackets, but we don't have our circle brackets right here. And it's going to give us a syntax error. Right here, it says a open parentheses expected, invalid expression, these curly brackets, because it doesn't see the if statement here, and it says a closing brackets expected because it wants us to have these brackets. And even if we do that, we have to have something inside of it. So we can just delete this for now. And then that is another really common Unity error, the syntax error. Another very common way to get the syntax error is to do something like speed set equal to 10 and forget to put a semicolon after it. That would also give us this, a syntax error with a semicolon expected at this line. That is something you will most definitely find if you are coding in C#, because you are bound to forget a semicolon some of the time. Another area that you will find not inside of the coding editor but inside of Unity is this error. When we do a public, let's say game object, and then we name it something like player, and then instead of update, let's just do player dot set active, and we could just do false, just for something to do with this player. And then for right now, I'm going to set speed back to its normal value and get the E so that doesn't give us an error. So if we go inside of our Unity editor, and if we go to our test object, it's going to look for a player. But we are not going to give it one just to see the error that we are going to see. So we can click play to see the error. You can see here that my game didn't even go into play mode because I have error pause on. You might not have that on, so your game still might be running, but it's giving me this unassigned reference exception, and that means there is nothing here, but it's trying to access it. The variable of test script has not been assigned. You probably need to assign the player variable of the test script in the inspector, and that's talking about this. If we double click this, it's going to take us to the exact line of code, and it's this thing right here, player.setActive false. And if we do a breakpoint right here, which I'm not going to do because that might take a little bit, but if we go to a breakpoint and look what the player is, it's going to be set to null because there is nothing in the player, but if we're accessing it, and trying to do something with it, we can't do that. We can't set nothing to false, so our Unity is throwing us an error. And that is the last of the errors that I'm going to be talking about today. Debugging may seem very intimidating at first, but with these tools, the Unity console edit errors, debug.log, breakpoints, and the common errors that I showed you, you will quickly find and fix all of the issues inside of your game. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more Unity tutorials, and let me know your favorite debugging tip in the comments. See you in the next video.